you. Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the staff for having me here this evening, and more importantly, all of you that were brave enough to come out to talk about Ghost of Illinois and the safety of the public library here. If we could please get the lights turned down, we'll start our journey. As she said, my background is in psychology, but for the last 14 years I've been traveling the globe in search of the paranormal. Everything from vampires and UFOs to crop circles and mysterious creatures. If it's weird, I've traveled the globe in search of it. But this time of year, most people are interested in ghosts and haunted locations. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have seen a program on TV about ghosts? Nearly all of you. Well, it is fun to hear about these places in California or New York, but it's a whole nother matter when these places are right in your own backyard. So that's what we're going to explore tonight. Some of the most haunted locations of Illinois. We'll take a tour of the entire state and end up right back here in town. I'll give you the background, the ghost lore, the folklore, the eyewitness accounts. I'll talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we use. Heck, I'll even provide you with the directions to get to these places. But I'm going to leave it up to each and every one of you to travel to these locations on your own and determine for yourself whether or not you believe they're haunted. But be warned, it's much easier watching these places on television than it is visiting these places, because when you're at that haunted abandoned building and you see that shadowy figure lurking from window to window, you simply can't turn the channel. So with that in mind, let's explore some of the scariest places of Illinois. And when I talk about scary places, I'm certainly not referring to the Bears-Packers game. Go ahead and soak that in. I'm talking about places that are thought to be haunted with ghosts, spirits, and apparitions. For many of you, the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear about a haunted location is that of a cemetery. Well, the reason's quite simple. Back when cemeteries were chosen, the land was thought to be a portal between our world and the spirit world. So when your loved one passed on, it'd just be much easier for them to travel from our world to whatever world you believe they go to. But regardless of whether or not you believe that theory, the people at Hillside at Mount Carmel Cemetery believe that the theory's actually working in reverse, that the living world is not moving into the spirit world, but their world is moving in to our world. Because here, most people know this cemetery as the final resting spot of the infamous Chicago gangster Al Capone. But we'll get to old Scarface a little bit later in the presentation. You see, most people who go to this cemetery go here to see what the locals whisper about as being the Italian bride. Her name's Julia, and in 1921 she was 29 years of age, and she died giving birth to her child. And was the Italian custom at that time, she was to be buried in her wedding gown with her stillborn child. And you can see a photograph of her wedding dress that she was buried in. Well, the scary part came as soon after she died, her mother started having dreams where Julia came to her in her dreams and said, "Mom, help me, I'm buried alive, dig me up, please help me." Well, the mother thought nothing of it, but she kept having these dreams. She petitioned the church and the cemetery, and she finally got permission to dig up her daughter. The only problem was, it was 6 years later. But what scared them the most was the fact that when they dug up the grave of the young woman, even though the casket was nearly rotted out, the body of young Julia looked as though she had been buried the day before. Many of those who saw her said she looked as though she was just sleeping. It was so terrifying that they decided, hey, why not take a picture of this and put it on the gravestone as well? And soon after word spread about the condition of Julia, that many unsuspecting people traveling the cemetery often reported seeing the ghostly image of a woman in her bridal gown walking the cemetery. At first glance, people thought she was somebody getting married paying her respects to a family member or loved one. It wasn't until they got close to her and they saw that she was nearly transparent and she disappeared right before their eyes. Well, was anyone ever buried alive? Is this anything more than an urban legend? Well, we know people were buried alive. How do we know this? We have hundreds of newspaper accounts from the late 1800s, early 1900s of people right before being buried popped up out of their funeral. They were either in a diabetic shock or in a coma. Doctors pronounced them dead, but they, at the last moment, popped back to life. So you can imagine how many people didn't pop back to life. And people of that time were so afraid of being buried alive that they came up with what was known as a cemetery bell. This is exactly as it looks. It would be a bell with a rope going down into the grave. So if you awoke to find yourself buried alive, all you'd have to do is pull this rope and it would ring the bell and alert the caretaker that you were buried alive. The only problem with this invention is that on many nights the wind would set these bells off, giving the caretaker quite a scare thinking everybody had been buried alive. Many of you have heard the old saying, "Saved by the bell." Well, this is the origin of that saying. At first glance, if you head to Centralia at the Elmwood Cemetery, nothing appears out of the ordinary. It looks like your run-of-the-mill average cemetery. That is, until you come to the gravestone of young Annie. Annie was a young girl who died many years ago. Unfortunately, the disease that took her life has been lost to history. It was not recorded. But what everybody agreed upon at the time is that Annie was a wonderful violin player. So when she passed away, her family constructed this monument to Annie with her violin. And now, many unsuspecting people walking through the cemetery often report hearing the faint sounds of a violin being played. But when they track the source of this violin, they ultimately come to the gravestone of Annie. So when we did our investigation, we tried for several nights to record any music that Annie might have been playing, but unfortunately for us, she was not playing that evening. But my favorite part is the dare. Now tonight you're going to hear a lot of dares. People who dare one another to do things at these locations. And the dare here is that if you approach the cemetery at night, of course, and you hide behind a tree or a surrounding tombstone, and if you're very quiet, not only will you hear the sound of Annie playing her violin, but I've spoken with many witnesses who claim that the statue will actually move as though she's playing the violin as well. How many of you have heard the story of Resurrection Mary? Quite a few of you, perhaps the most infamous case in all of Illinois. And it starts at Resurrection Cemetery in Justice. But our story goes back a little bit further into time. Because back at the Willowbrook Ballroom in Willow Springs, during the 1920s and 30s, this was called the O. Henry Ballroom because it was sponsored by the O. Henry Candy Bar. The legend goes that on one of their many popular dances that they held at the ballroom, a young girl by the name of Mary was there dancing. And when the dance cleared out, young Mary left to go home. And somehow she was killed on the side of the road. Whether she was struck by an automobile or she was in an automobile, nobody knows. But since that time in 1930, many people have been driving the road, Archer Road, between Resurrection Cemetery and the ballroom, and they report seeing the ghostly image of a young woman on the side of the road dressed in a very nice dancing gown. Many people have actually stopped to pick up the ghost of this young woman, except they didn't think it was a ghost. They thought it was a real woman out there who was in trouble or needed help, so they picked her up. And many times, according to legend, the story is that she gave them an address. And when they got to the address, she disappeared. But the address turned out to be, you probably guessed it, Resurrection Cemetery. Well, if you do go to Resurrection Cemetery, there are about a dozen young women who all seem to fit the bill of Resurrection Mary. Nobody knows who the real Mary was, But we know she had to have died prior to 1930 because that's when the stories originate. We know that her name had to be Mary or some variation of Mary, and that she's always reported to be somewhere between 16 and 20 years of age. So if you're driving down Archer Road, make sure you slow down because you might pick up Resurrection Mary. Believe it or not, this Midlothian cemetery is pretty run down. It's abandoned, it's vandalized, but it got national publicity a few years back when investigators captured this photograph in the cemetery of what they believed to be the lady in white that had been reported there for about 50 years circulating throughout the cemetery. Many people have seen this young woman in white, as she's called. But of course, there's a dare here as well. The dare is that leading out behind the cemetery are several trails that lead into the swampy area. And the legend is that if you walk out on the right trail, you will come across a phantom house. But it is said that if you can get into this phantom house before the house disappears, you will never get out of this phantom house. So if you're going to do this dare, I can't be held responsible for what might take place. This is one of my favorite types of cases because not only do you get a haunting, a ghost story, but you get a little bonus as well. This is Ramsey Cemetery in Effingham. And it's here for many years. People have been taking their girlfriends out to the cemetery because it's thought to be haunted. So the men, we talked to seniors in their 80s that remember taking their girlfriends out here when they were teenagers to scare them, to really get them into the mood for Halloween. Most of the time it was the men who got scared, but that's a different story. But it's also out here for years. People had reported seeing strange balls of light similar to this floating throughout the cemetery. And during the 1950s, there was a chapel out here that you could go and say your prayers or pay your respects to the dead. But one day, a distraught teenager went out to the chapel with a shotgun, and he ended his own life out there. And a couple weeks later, they found what was left of his body. This only enhanced the haunted reputation of the cemetery. So they finally tore down the chapel because so many people were going there to see the chapel where this young boy committed suicide. But my favorite part is the dare, and the dare has nothing to do with the cemetery. The dare has to do with how you get to the cemetery. You see, this cemetery is out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And in order to get here, you have to drive up a long dirt road. And on the side of this dirt road are several caves indented into the landscape. And it is said that if you are brave enough to walk out to these caves, you might encounter what many people believe to be a werewolf out there. Yeah, usually insert laughter here. Most people are a little shy and embarrassed about reporting this. They know how it sounds, a werewolf in Illinois, but they report the creature at first to be the size of a bear. But they say it's shaped more like a wolf. It has the snout of a wolf and this deep matted down fur. What really terrifies witnesses is that they told me that the creature seems to be a biped, meaning that it walks upright on its hind legs like you and I do. Unfortunately, most of the witnesses that I've spoken with do not stick around long enough to find out where this creature is going. But don't feel bad. I'm a lifelong resident of Wisconsin, and we become known as the werewolf capital of the U.S., thanks to a good friend and colleague of mine, Linda Godfrey, who was first working as a journalist in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, in southeastern portion of the state. She started getting reports along Bray Road that the media dubbed the Beast of Bray Road. And it was similar to the Ramsey Cemetery creature. In fact, it was more like a werewolf. Again, a large wolf-type creature running around on his hind legs. Well, since Linda's come out with several of her books, I get numerous reports every year about these strange werewolf-type creatures running throughout the Midwest. Most of the witnesses that I speak with are determined and convinced that this is not your typical Bigfoot-type creature, which we also have here roaming throughout the Midwest. If you head to Chesterville, Illinois, you'll come to Chesterville Cemetery, except the locals know it better as Witch Cemetery. You see, this is in the heart of Amish and Mennonite communities, and it is said that many years ago, a young witch in the community was murdered by the elders in order to stop her from bringing evil spirits to their community. And they constructed this gate and this large tree to keep the spirit of the woman inside. And now, it is said that if anything happens to this tree, if it's cut down or if it dies, it will release the spirit of this young woman who will come back as a witch and seek revenge at those who took her life. There's also a dare here, of course, and the dare is that at midnight, if you're brave enough to run in and touch any portion of the tree, that the witch, the ghost of this young witch, will make herself known to you. Well, take a good look at the tree. You'll see here what appears to be an iron gate surrounding the grave. We know there's a woman buried in the grave. Cemetery records indicate so, but nobody knows who the woman is. The records do not contain a name. Well, you might be thinking that they constructed this iron gate to keep people away from the grave. But in actuality, they constructed this iron gate not to keep you out, but to keep the spirit in. You see, many cultures throughout the U.S. in the old days reported that ghosts could not pass through iron. So if you were afraid of an enemy or someone you had wronged coming back to haunt you, you'd put an iron bar on their casket or around the cemetery. If you were really afraid, you'd bury their body on the other side of running water with the belief that ghosts can't cross running water. Other communities in the U.S., in the villages, used to paint their house a different color. Therefore, if somebody came back to haunt you, they might think that you had moved and they would terrorize your neighbors instead of you. You might think these are weird beliefs we have in the U.S., but a couple years ago I was over in the country of Romania in Transylvania hunting for vampires. They have even stranger, or I should say, more unique beliefs than we have here. Because over there, if you were afraid of somebody coming back to haunt you, or as a vampire, you'd have to stake them through the heart to stop them from coming back. If that didn't do it, to be really cautious, you'd cut off their head and bury it separately from the body. And in very rural areas of Transylvania, I stumbled across a belief that if you were really upset at somebody and they might come back to haunt you or as a vampire, you'd have the body cremated. But you wouldn't stop there. You would take those cremated remains, grind them up even more, and then make them into a soup, and the entire family would consume this soup, therefore spreading out the spirit of that person so they could not come back and haunt you. Luckily, or maybe unluckily for me, when I was over there, I was unable to try any of their soup. Cemeteries aren't the only haunted locations you have here in Illinois. Actually, as you'll see tonight, nearly every type of place can be haunted. And this is one of my favorites. It's in Mount Carroll, Illinois. And this is the Ravens Grin Inn. And it's a haunted house. What I mean by this is that any night of the year, you can go to the Ravens Grin Inn and get haunted through the house by mechanical zombies, people dressed up. The owner, Jim, will even try to scare you. What most people don't realize is that the haunted house is actually haunted. And even though it looks like a combination of a Disneyland ride and a Tim Burton movie, the place used to be a speakeasy. Back in the 1920s, people would go to the speakeasy to partake in one of the ladies of the night. They would gamble, drink, but the place soon gained a haunted reputation. It got so many people seeing the ghost of a young woman sliding across the room and disappearing into the vent that they dubbed her Matilda. Nobody knows why they called her that, but the newspapers of that time said that so many people saw her that she literally scared away customers and the speakeasy had to close down. And now, when you take a tour here, make sure you go down into the wine cellar where the old speakeasy was. In order to get there, you have to find the secret passage but you'll find it. But when you're down there, even today, many unsuspecting tour-goers report seeing that woman slide across the floor and then disappear into the vent. Many people tell Jim, "This is wonderful. How did you have that woman do that? This is a great trick." And he has to tell them that he has no women working downstairs as a ghost, at least not any that are living. Well, if you thought those cases were weird, these next cases are going to get even stranger. If you're looking for something to do, head to Collinsville. But if you do, you might want to avoid the gates to hell, as they're called. There are a series of 7 train track tunnels going over the bridge here. And it is said that when you start to pass through 3 or 4 of these, weird things will start to take place. You'll start to hear odd noises, you'll see strange things, and you might even encounter what many people call the hellhounds of Collinsville. These creatures have been reported throughout history. They're often reported to be large black dogs with glowing red or green eyes. Many cultures believe that these creatures actually do the devil's bidding. Just to give you an idea, you're not alone in believing in hellhounds. A few summers ago, I was in the country of Belize, going through their jungles looking for this creature called the Tata Duende. He's a protector of their jungles over there. And everywhere we went, they said, "Beware, you better be in by nightfall, because if you're not, you will encounter one of our hellhounds, and if they see you, they will connect with you and steal your energy, and you'll die very shortly." So being the researchers that we were, we made it a point to stay out past dark every night, and luckily I still made it here today. But back at Collinsville, it gets even stranger. You may want to take mental notes on this one, because it gets a bit complicated. Because the dare is that if you can pass through all 7 of these train track bridge tunnels, if you find all of them, you do all of it before midnight without passing through more or one of them more than once, you may encounter what many witnesses believe to be a portal to hell that will open up. Again, they're a little embarrassed and they hesitate a bit to tell this story, but they say that they felt heat coming up from this portal. They could even see flames rising out of the portal. Unfortunately, they didn't stick around to see where this portal went. But what researchers have found, and what I've discovered over the last 14 years, is that the witnesses probably didn't know that I've collected nearly half a dozen places in the state that also have a similar portal to hell that will open up. So I'm just waiting for that national headline to come out. Illinois, portal to hell. But if you'd rather not look into the underworld, you may want to do the closest thing, and that is look into the gangster underworld. And in order to do that, you have to travel to Chicago. Because here, in what is now a senior center and a front lawn, if you traveled back to 1929, this would have been an auto body garage. And it was the hideout of Bugs Moran, or Bugsy as he was known. Now, Bugs Moran was the enemy of the infamous Chicago gangster Al Scarface Capone. And Capone came up with a great idea. He hired several colleagues from out of state to raid Bugsy's hideout, posed as police officers. They went in and put all Bugsy's men against the wall. Bugsy's men thought this was their typical shakedown, that they would give the police a few dollars and they'd be on their way like normal. So they put all their weapons down. But then they soon found out that these were not Chicago police officers, because the men opened fire on Bugsy's colleagues and killed all of them. The only survivor was a dog. And the dog started barking so much that a neighbor came over. And the neighbor found the bodies of the men. Now, if you have children in the audience, or if you have a squeamish stomach, close your eyes for this next slide, because this is the exact scene that man came over and found. Because when he came in to see what had taken place, this is what he found. All of the men had been shot down and they were dead. Okay, the slide's gone. Well, the dog was so terrified that it had to be put to sleep. And of course, the place is no longer there. They tore it down to make room for the senior center. But if you want a brick from where this St. Valentine's Day massacre took place, because it happened on St. Valentine's Day, you can buy the brick on eBay for about $2,000 to $3,000 per brick. But now many people believe that it's haunted by several of the victims who died there that day. Even Capone himself believed until the day he died that he was haunted by one of the men that were killed there that day. Of course, Capone might have been delirious suffering from syphilis, but that's a different story. But my favorite part is many people walking by often bring their dogs. And dogs have one of two reactions here. One, they'll start to whimper and run away as fast as they can. Other dogs will start barking at something that cannot be seen. The owners believe that their dogs are picking up on the ghosts of the men who were gunned down at the Valentine's Day massacre. Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Wisconsin, and we've been known to have a few weird characters in our state. Does anyone recognize this outstanding citizen? Anyone? Just go ahead.
Ed Gein.
Yes, Ed Gein, or as his neighbors in Plainfield, Wisconsin called him, Ed Gein. Most of you probably think of Ed as the inspiration for the movie Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and most probably remember Ed as a murderer. And true, Ed was an evil murderer. But Ed's real passion in life was to dig up the recently deceased bodies of women that reminded him of his dead mother. He would then cut off all of the skin of these women and make it into furniture for his house. But Ed was well liked in the community. He often was a babysitter. He always brought his neighbors plenty of venison for them to eat. But when Ed really got a bug up his system, what he would do is cut off the face of these women, make it into a mask and a body outfit, and he would dance around under the moonlight wearing that outfit in his front yard. You know, typical Wisconsin behavior. But you see, when Ed was captured and they found out his grisly tragedy that took place there, the day before the house was going to open as a museum, it mysteriously burned to the ground. When Jeffrey Dahmer, the cannibal of Milwaukee, got a taste for human skin, they tore down his apartment complex in downtown Milwaukee. My point being here is that in Wisconsin, when tragic events take place, we like to get rid of them and pretend they never happened. But you people of Illinois, you're a little bit different. Because when tragic events take place, not only do you not get rid of these, you turn them in to a tourist destination. Now put on your zoot suit for this one, because this story takes us back to 1934. And it's at the Biograph Theater in Chicago. Now imagine you're in there watching a movie. You're in a cramped theater, much like you're here tonight with everybody else. You start looking around to see what friends and family members are there, and then you catch a glimpse of somebody. But you don't want it to be the person you think it was. Because in 1934, the last person you'd want to see in that theater next to you was exactly who was in that theater that evening. Any guesses? Heard some great guesses. None other than John Dillinger. If you don't know who he is, you will in a couple months, and I'll explain that in just a moment. John Dillinger was a bank robber from the 20s and 30s. He was our first celebrity criminal, America's public enemy #1. He was the man the U.S. government could not capture. And when they did, he simply broke himself out of prison, or his buddies broke him out of prison. John Dillinger was one of the sole reasons the FBI was created, in order to capture fugitives like Dillinger. Well, what John didn't know that night is he apparently was set up by a friend of his girlfriend at the time. So when he walked out of the theater, he saw several FBI men, and he made a run for it into this alleyway where they shot him down and he died. Or did he die? Some conspiracy theorists believe that it wasn't Dillinger, that it was a petty criminal from Wisconsin called Jimmy Lawrence that looked like Dillinger that was taking the fall for him. But let's assume, like most Dillinger scholars do assume, that it was John that died there that day. Immediately after he was gunned down, word started spreading. They got Dillinger. That's John. They finally got him. nobody could believe it. So men and women went over with their handkerchiefs and newspapers and dipped it into the blood of Dillinger. That's how big of a celebrity he was during this time era. He was like the Elvis Presley of the 1930s. Well, of course, gangsters no longer hang out here at the Biograph Theater. Many people believe they've simply moved their headquarters to the Capitol building in Springfield, but that's a different presentation. But many people walking by this alley report hearing a gunshot going off. Well, it is Chicago, so there may be a lot of guns going off. But they report that it's the sound of a Tommy gun going off. They can even smell the gunpowder and the gun smoke. But when they look around, nobody can be found. Others report seeing a man running through the alley dressed as though he's from the 1920s or 1930s. But my favorite part is that if you go into the Biograph Victory Gardens and you see a play or some live theater, you may want to look over next to you, because up even to this day, many people report seeing the ghostly image of a man thought to be John Dillinger inside the theater. Now I mentioned, if you don't know who he is, you will in a couple months, because this last summer they were filming a movie throughout the Midwest that got outrageous publicity all over because it starred that little-known actor called Johnny Depp. Well, that's based on Dillinger. It's called Public Enemies. And if you want to visit these sites before all the tourists do, I'd get there before the movie comes out. How many of you remember Rosemary's Baby? Well, many of you probably don't know that it was based loosely on a case from Chicago, right at the Jane Addams Hull House. You see, Mrs. Charles Hull moved in here. She lived here and died inside the house. Soon after, many people reported strange footsteps moving around upstairs. Many people living and working there could not stay upstairs because of all the ghostly activity. Then Jane Addams moved in the house. It was said that she was a caretaker of children. She took in many poor and unfortunate children. And she may have gotten a little bit more than she bargained for, because there are several stories as to what child was dropped off at the Hull House. By the way, Jane Addams could not stay upstairs either because she was plagued by the ghost of the footsteps moving around upstairs. But the main version of the story goes that a young couple in Chicago were about to have a baby. The woman was a devout Catholic, and she wanted to hang a drawing of the Virgin Mary on the wall. So she put it up. But her husband was an atheist, and he came home, grabbed the picture, and smashed it on the floor. He said, "I'd rather have the devil live in my house than for you to put that drawing of the Virgin Mary up." And his wife gave birth to a child a few months later. But it wasn't really a child. It was more like, well, maybe I better let you take a look. This creature. Well, maybe not quite like this creature, but it was said to have horns, scales, hooves, and a tail. It was said that this creature could walk and talk from the moment it was born, and it loved to smoke cigars and swear. As weird as that sounds to us today, it was said that the devil child was dropped off for Jane Addams to take care of up at the Hull House. And hundreds of people would line up around the house willing to pay admission to get in to see the devil child that was thought to live upstairs. Many of the local children avoided walking by the house because they would often catch a glimpse of the devil child upstairs. They do give tours of the house today. And when I was there, they told me all about the ghost stories of the place, but they don't often talk about the devil child living upstairs. So if you want to get a closer look, I suggest you take one of the haunted tours that will bring you there at night to see the ghost or the devil child upstairs. Of course, I could not do a presentation in Illinois without talking about Mr. Lincoln, perhaps the most beloved leader in U.S. history. He's on our penny, our $5 bill. His stoic face anchors Mount Rushmore. For many people, the memory of Mr. Lincoln will live on forever. But those who visit his house in Springfield believe it's more than his memory that's living on, because here people not only see the ghost of his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, and that of what is believed to be a maid of Mr. Lincoln. But I talked with many staff that report while closing up at night, making sure everybody's out of the place, they often pass by Lincoln's favorite rocking chair, and they notice that it appears to be moving back and forth as though someone or something is rocking in the chair. Well, if it is the ghost of Mr. Lincoln, he seems to be busier in death than he was in life, because at least a dozen places in Springfield alone all claim to be the home of Abraham Lincoln's ghost. This is a unique case in Cambridge, and it's out here on Devil Curve, or Death Curve as it's known. People say if you go out here around Death Curve, you'll crash your car when you try to avoid a woman out there with an axe. Nobody knows why she's out there. Well, I started to dig up some research and found that in 1900, a family lived out here called the Markham family. And in 1905, Mr. Markham was working in town. His wife, Julia, sent their two oldest children away to get water and firewood. And when they were gone, she went over and grabbed an axe and took it to the 5 youngest children, killing all of them. When her 2 oldest children came back, they were treated to the same behavior, and she killed them as well. Then it was said that she snapped out of her trance and tried to commit suicide. She slit her wrist, but that didn't work. So she gathered up the bodies of all of her children, put them on the bed, and covered them with coal oil and herself, and lit the place on fire. But then neighbors saw the smoke and came rushing over and saved Julia from the fire. But they noticed what she had done. She immediately denied it. But then right before she died at 3 p.m., she admitted what she had done. She killed all of her children. And just down the road, in an unmarked grave, all 7 of her children, what was left of their charred remains, were dumped into one grave, and Julia was dumped into another grave. And since that time, many people have reported seeing the ghost of this young woman with a bloody axe haunting the location. But the dare is even better. The dare is if you walk through the cornfield, you may come across the phantom house where the Markhams once lived. And much like the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery house, that this house is said to disappear right before your eyes. Right down the road is that cemetery where the children are buried. And for many years, people have seen the ghostly image of young children running around, and many think that it's the ghost of the Markham children waiting for a proper burial. Well, as I'm getting low on time right now, I want to end with a case from right here in town. And it's a type of case you haven't heard me talk about tonight because it's a haunted home. And most people who live in a haunted house do not want it to be known that their house is haunted. This drawing is not even an accurate portrayal of this house. This is a relatively new house in the area, but it's been thought to be haunted since it was built. Many families would move in. They could not stay here. They would move out. I talked to a family who lived there several years ago who told me strange things would often happen. They would hear mysterious knockings on the doors, but nobody would ever be there. They would hear music coming from one of the rooms, but they couldn't find a source. Many of the kids would be talking to imaginary children. The children reported someone or something throwing covers off of them in the middle of the night. The parents would hear the children running up and down the stairs, even though the children were sound asleep. It got to be so much that that family moved out, vowing never to return. But here's the kicker. I'm not going to tell you where this house is here in town, because tonight, when all of you go home and you put your heads down on your pillows and you hear the wind rustling outside your window, I want you to ask yourself just one simple question. How much do you really know about the history of your house? And is it possible not only that you're living in a haunted house, but you might be living in this very house that I'm talking about right now? And with that, I want to save the last 10 or so minutes that we might have for any questions, stories, or comments that you might have. If we could please get the lights turned up. If you do want more information, you can find more than you'd ever need on my website. Now, normally I bring someone from Eau Claire to plant the first question to get it going, but you're too far from Wisconsin for me to have brought someone. So I'll open it up if you have any questions, stories, or comments that you'd like to ask. Oh, I might get off the hook tonight. Excuse me? Yeah, the Summerwind Mansion? It's up in northern Wisconsin. Very famous haunted place. Have you been there? Oh, yeah. Anything happen? Tell us if you would.
A lot of bats.
So you were there when it was still, or some part of it was still up. Okay. Ooh, yeah. A friend of mine has pictures of the door. This was a very haunted old mansion where so many people were afraid of ghosts. It was thought to be so haunted. It's so strange. They've done books on it, whole movies on it, but they were so afraid they would actually shoot at the ghosts. They were so terrified. So when the house was still standing, some of my colleagues got pictures of the bullet holes throughout the house where they would shoot at the ghosts. So great question. Yes?
You know the Discovery show Haunting?
Yes.
They have a whole episode based on the Summerwind house.
Yeah, they do. And I can tell you that A Haunting's a great show. A few months ago, I filmed a episode with them on the Discovery Channel of a cemetery in Wisconsin. And they wanted the facts. Most TV shows that I work with, they want teenagers running around scared and yelling. But The Haunting actually wanted the real facts. So I had to give them credit for that. And they did a bang-up job on not only the Summerwind show, but all of their shows. Unfortunately, it's still on, but it's no longer in new production. So other questions, stories, or comments that you might have out there? Anyone have a story they'd like to share?
About Amityville, do you believe that?
Oh, great question. Amityville. Well, I'm pretty skeptical of it. The new owners that moved in after the DeFeo family moved out, Ronald DeFeo killed his family. He said he was possessed by spirits. The next family that moved in there, the Lutz family, they're the ones who believed strange things were going. There's still debate back and forth today whether or not it was real. A lot of people saying, I was there, I saw it, I know it happened. Others saying they had a movie deal and a book deal long before they moved in. And the new family actually sued the old family for creating the story because they were hounded by so many people once they moved in. They even redid the front of the building so people wouldn't recognize it and come harass them. So I don't know about the Amityville case. I'm pretty skeptical about some aspects, but I've heard a lot of stories very similar to it. So I don't know, but great story or great question. When I was over in Ireland, Scotland, and the UK, I'd ask about castles, or I'd stop into a pub and say, I'm looking for all the gnomes and goblins. Could you tell me where they are? And they'd say, which ones? Now, I dare you to go into any pub here in Illinois and ask where all the goblins hang out and see what kind of response you get. But it just shows that, yeah, over there, they believe in it. And you can't throw a rock without hitting an old castle that's said to be haunted. Over there, a place is old when it's 400 years. Here, it's old when it's 20 years. So it's pretty unique over there. And would you go back to some of these haunted places?
Oh yeah, we go to Hermitage every year because
all right.
I heard this ghost in 1987. She's never heard or felt it, but it's really weird that we were standing above the dungeon where there's this hole in where the dungeon was, and the old caretaker, he told me an interesting story. He says, because the caretaker's shack is away from the castle. He goes, my friend from Chicago was trying to find a ghost. He said, you ever heard or seen anything in there? And for years he said, no, not a thing. He goes, my dog, though, will not go anywhere near the dungeon. He goes, a lot of women won't go near the dungeon. And that's where I heard the ghost. And if you stand over the dungeon, you say the name Lord Dasulis, the hair on your arm, it's really freaky. And the hair on my arm stands up every time that happens. But he told me one year, you were with me, and he couldn't wait to see me. He said, this is my friend from Chicago, I've been waiting to see you. I said, what's the matter with you? He said, I'm a believer now. I said, well, what happened to you? He says, well, after the season, it was in November, and he showed me this article from German newspaper. They did a whole thing on him. Discovery Channel was there. They spent like a week. He said, I was creosote in the door. That's like a lacquer. He says, I was creosote in the door, and all of a sudden, from the stone staircase came the Earl of Bothwell walking right at me. And that was one of Mary Queen of Scots' lovers.
Yeah.
I said, was he transparent? Could you see right through? He says, no. He was as solid as you and I, and he's got about 3 feet from me, and he, boom, disappeared.
Yeah. Very common. Most people think that ghosts are always transparent, but a lot of people report looking like you and I do, that it's not until they disappear that they realize that, hey, or they recognize them as someone who should be dead. So I think you had a question, ma'am?
I did. I was wondering if you believe in the spirits that, you know, the show that's on TV where she talks to the people before they cross over and go, what, I can't think, Ghost Whisperer. Have you ever?
Yeah, the question, do I believe in any of the psychics or mediums? And we work with a lot of mediums. Just last month, my research partner, Terry Fisk, was down in Tombstone, Arizona with Allison Dubois, who's the psychic they based the show Medium on NBC after. And she was taking him on a tour where she would pick up whatever she could pick up, and the next day, Terry would go to the archives and to the historical societies and try to capture and see if she was accurate or not. And he was just amazed at how well she was doing at picking up things. And whether or not she planned for it, we don't know. But a lot of the times when we bring psychics or mediums or intuitives, as they like to be called, sometimes they know things that they couldn't possibly know unless they read our minds. But other times you're better off bringing a loaf of bread because you get things that are so far away. So we've had about 50-50 with them. Sometimes they're absolutely wonderful. Other times, they're a little off. And that's expected of anyone. But yeah, we do bring that. We use a ton of scientific, or at least quasi-scientific equipment as best we can. A couple of van loads of all this equipment. And then we also bring in, the new age side of it as well, trying to capture both ends. So we try quite a bit to document these things. Yes?
Have you yourself experienced ghosts?
Have I experienced ghosts? That's a great question. Little things. We've captured balls of light, mist, fog, things like that on video, audio that weren't there when, at least we couldn't see it with the human eye. But psychics say they've been pushed, slapped, pinched on our investigations, but nothing where I would say it's outright 100% paranormal, where, I haven't had a ghost come up to me and say, hi, I'm a ghost, I'm here, take my picture. But little things, but nothing overwhelmingly yet. But I think it's that not having that keeps me going. After 14 years of doing this, I'm still waiting for that next experience. So that's what I'm waiting for, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Out of all the places you've been to, have you ever had a ghost that was once mean and tried to physically get you out?
Have I ever had a ghost that was physically mean? I haven't. We've been to thousands of haunted and weird places. What's interesting, though, is some of those mediums we bring with us, sometimes they'll say, I'm not getting out of the car. I'm too scared. This place is just too much for me. I'm staying here. And, of course, that's where we want to go. But we've never had a case where the ghost has harmed anyone. We've had a couple cases. For instance, there was a case in Wisconsin where a gentleman said that every night when he was going to bed, a spirit was chewing at his legs, and he couldn't sleep. So we ended up spending the night there watching this guy sleep, and nothing happened that night. But we get cases like that. People say they've been kind of pushed. It's more of the time in a playful manner, that somebody's just a trickster type being, rather than the sinister type evil spirit. So maybe one more, yes.
Yeah, any unique things that you experienced in Transylvania?
Any unique things in Transylvania? Great question. Yeah, there's pretty much the entire county of Transylvania is unique. Transylvania is a huge county in Romania, and for most of it, it's very rural. It's much like the U.S. would have been 200 years ago. No electricity, people on horse and buggy, and we were out in the middle of the country in this little, they called it a B&B, basically just you rent the barn out for the night, and we were planning the next day's investigation, and we ran out of equipment we needed for the next day. It's about 8 p.m., dark. Well, we had to run into town, so I volunteered. I'll go into town to get about 2 miles away. But the only way to get there was through the path through the woods. So I'm walking through the woods. All I have with me is a little, the little lamp thing you read a book with. You clamp it onto a book. So I have that, and I'm walking through the woods. And every sound to me, obviously, my mind was just going. That every sound was a werewolf sharpening his claws, or Vlad the Impaler coming up on a horse and carriage, inviting me to his carriage or to his castle. And I'll tell you one thing: I made pretty good time to the town and back. And halfway, I wanted to turn around and just say, "Screw this," but I knew I'd never hear the end of it, so I kept going. But I was pretty freaked. And a lot of these rural countries where they live in very primitive means compared to us here in the U.S. are fascinating, because you get out there in the middle of nowhere and it's dark, 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 and it's surrounded by forest. It gets creepy. No matter how many times you've done it, you still get pretty spooked. So there have been numerous times where I really wish I wouldn't have done it, but I did it. And I don't know if I would now that I'm a little older. Maybe not wiser, but yeah, sir.
I just have a question for
Sure.
you. What's your take on, you're doing a paranormal investigation and provoking to make contact?
Doing a research, provoking it. Yeah, I know a lot of investigators that are just so tired of nothing happening that they provoke it. Maybe provoke's a strong word. They encourage it. They'll even say, a lot of people who try to capture EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomenon, they'll ask into a microphone or a recorder, is there anyone here? If you're here, please tell me something. And then you'll sit there and you'll feel foolish waiting for something. And then you ask another question. But I've had researchers that try to trick these spirits, that they'll come in, set up equipment, and cover it with like shirts. And they'll hang out with the family. If the family's eating dinner, having a beer, they'll do the same thing, watch a movie, just trying to make it as natural as possible. But a lot of people will outright provoke it, saying, hey, if there's someone here, come on, I don't believe you. Make yourself known. And I recommend do whatever you're comfortable with. You know, if you're comfortable just sitting and waiting and hoping something, if you're comfortable provoking it, sure, go ahead. It's your investigation. But yeah.
You ever heard of Arlington Cemetery in Elmhurst?
Yes. What have you heard of it?
Well, we do paranormal investigation too.
What have you found?
We got a couple really good pictures, a lot of orbs, and one picture in the tree with nothing behind it, a huge ball of light like the sun. And the picture wasn't taken through glass or anything. I mean, we debunked it completely.
There's three of us there.
And we also got
Yeah.
some EVPs from there, you know, the child and stuff.
Which cemetery?
Arlington Cemetery in Elmhurst.
Arlington Cemetery in Elmhurst.
I just heard about it 2 weeks ago. I was in Chicago Ridge presenting, and someone asked me about it, and I'd never heard of it until then. So I'm curious.
Did they say something?
No, they had heard stories similar to, yeah, they had heard that it was thought to be haunted.
we didn't even know it was.
Yeah,
It's just that
until you went there.
5 years ago, we took, I had my stepdaughter take some pictures, and in one picture I had a mist forming around my legs, and I mean, it wasn't cold, there was no explanation for it, but.
Well, that's a great story. All right, one more, yeah.
Have you ever been out on Cuba Road and seen any of the stuff there?
Yeah, what road? I'm sorry.
Cuba Road?
Cuba Road? No. Tell me about it, please.
Oh, well, it's this old road in Cuba Township in Barrington, and there's this really old cemetery from like the 1800s, and like you drive by there. There's always cops there now, but before you drive by, and like you would try and go in there, and like I guess spirits come out on the ground and try and grab you. There's always orbs of light chasing you around. And if you go further down on the road, it's like pitch black. And they said if you turn off your headlights and you keep driving, you'll see a house there. And the house will burn to flames or just disappear all of a sudden. And then further down, there's a street called Rainbow Road. There's an insane asylum on that street, which they knocked down and built houses over. And like you could hear like patients like screaming from there, even though it was empty.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. You have something on that?
About that, because that's the folklore in high school. The seniors always take the freshmen out on Cuba Road. University High School, or she went to Prospect, there's always Cuba Road, and all that.
Okay.
But if you try to get on Cuba Road here, like where Cuba Road starts in Long Grove, you got to go way down there. You got to cross Quentin, and you got to go into the cemetery he's talking about is a cemetery called White Cemetery.
Okay.
The cops really only watch it on Halloween.
Right.
During the day, anybody can go in and out of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, my friend one time saw orbs of light there. They don't they're just hanging over like that. And supposedly a haunted cemetery. And what he was saying about the house that was a sanitarium, it's supposedly one of those houses that appears, and then if you go in it while it's appearing and it disappears, you go with it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And
Those are the best.
supposedly, there's a house that doesn't disappear, though. There's a guy like a headless monk or something walking around out there, too.
Yeah, I'll have to go out there. I think that's a great one to end on. I will stick around if you want to ask me a question, tell me a story. Make sure you can see your reflection in the vampire kit. But again, I want to thank the library for having me. It's very unique. You can come to a town of this size, see a presentation like this at no cost. Check out a wealth of information. So if you like programs like this, let them know so you get more of these. If you didn't like this program, let them know so you get less of these. But either way, they put a lot of work into getting me here, and I truly hope that your adventure does not stop here tonight in this room. Grab a road guide, go out on your own adventure, and I think when you do explore your state, you're going to find that you live in an odd place. You're going to see some weird people, some strange things, and you might just find that you're a little weirder than you gave yourself credit for as well. So with that, I just want to encourage all of you to keep an eye out, because you never really know when you might be the next to experience one of these things. So if there are no other library announcements, enjoy the rest of your spooky evening, and thank you for coming.